Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is officially the start of the MLS offseason, as MLS Cup is finally in the books, and now we can look forward to the 2025 season, and we have some stuff to talk about with our Philadelphia Union. Welcome to today's edition of PHLY Union Podcast. Of course, I'm one of your hosts, JP Zapata, joined as always with the lovely Renee Washington. We got Andrew Frazier behind the glass here today, and of course, today at 3 p.m., Mark that timer at 3 p.m. If you want to talk some MLS Cup, we will get you guys eyes from the sidelines. Yes, we'll have a reporter who is there at the game with eyes from everything from Red Bull to Galaxy. That's at 3 p.m. Lili, Beth of Area Sports Network will join us. But before that, we need to talk about the blue and gold. Renee, how we doing? How we feeling on this beautiful Thursday afternoon?
I'm good. It's weird because as you were saying that, it is that weird reminder we are officially into the off season. Like it's been the off season for the Union, but it's now officially the off season for everybody. So that is a really odd thing to think about. Like now what's going to happen? We've got roster moves and some rumors and stuff. Like it's here. And this season flew by fast. So it's kind of sad. It's very sad.
Yeah. And of course, you cover the two sports that I feel like have the quickest off season. So by the time you know, we'll be back in Phillies and Union season. We'll be back right at it.
How are you, JP? How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy that the season's kind of over, and now it's like I know like everyone's frustrated with the way the Union season ended, but like there's something about like kind of like a fresh start, and the Union definitely need to take a little bit of a fresh start going 2025. I get excited for stuff like that. I don't know how much I trust what's going to happen in the next couple months, but we do have some stuff that we can talk about. But this time can be exciting for sure. The start of something new is always something refreshing. So we'll see what Ernst and company have cooking up, Renee. We shall see.
I know. I'm nervous. There's already been some moves, though. So there's already been some it's just a weird thing. It's just weird. I don't really know what's happening with the Union, but they have done some things.
They have. That's right, Renee. They have done some things, and we'll kick it off right away here. Let's start off with probably what was the oldest of the news, and that was last week. Tom Bogart, in his great articles that he's writing right now, gave us a little bit of an update here. As far as the manager search, of course, as we know, Jim will not be behind the sidelines for the Union next year, so we need to find ourselves a new manager. So Tom put out a little bit of a bogue bomb, and I'm going to share it here on our screen. It looks like Thomas Leitch will be, I guess, was this technically the second or third name link with the Union if you consider Richter and LeBlanc as the other two rumors. But this would be, I guess, the third rumor here as far as a name goes. So Thomas Leitch, he recently managed over in the Bundesliga, which I think now they're going to be in Bundesliga too, VfL Bochum. So the big thing here to keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, is that Thomas Leitch actually has a history with Ernst Tanner. They work together at Red Bull Salzburg. They have, obviously, that means that Thomas Leich's philosophies and tactics are more than likely going to be more resemblant to what Ernst Tanner probably wants out on the pitch. Renee, I did pull out this interesting article from back in 2021 when Leitch was back in the Eredivisie, the Dutch league. He was managing SBV Vitesse. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing these. And it's ironic because, Renee, there's a great in-depth piece in this article back in 21 about his tactics. And Renee, yes, a lot of high pressing, a lot of pressing with not one, but two forwards, where a number 10 kind of stays back and is kind of the interceptor, the cornerback, you can say there. So a lot of the stuff that Ernst wants, definitely Leitch can definitely bring. And obviously the relationship with Ernst Tanner in the past, and like we talked about before, it feels like a yes man is definitely coming to Philadelphia, a yes man to Ernst Tanner. Everything just kind of adds up. We'll see if this rumor does come to fruition, but if Tommy Bogues is tweeting this out, it's for a reason. So it's going to be interesting to see if this does come to life.
It's very interesting, JP, because as you're talking through, and we've been trying to figure out who's going to be the best fit for the Union, who's going to be the best to add to this coaching staff, it also makes you wonder, let's be honest, what is the direction of the 2025 season for the Union? Because I think that is what's going to determine which coach does come in or which coach is the best fit. Is this a rebuild mode? I know we talked about this before. Are they truly in a rebuild mode of let's just, kind of tear it down in the studs and start all over again? Are they in a we've got pieces, we just need to add a little bit here and there and fine tune and tweak? What kind of renovation are we going into? So I do feel like for the Union, who they hire as a head coach to me is more is beyond just their pedigree. I think it'll be a sign of the direction for the future. So I'm extremely interested and nervous. And also, as you look at some of the rumors of who could be head coach, but also some of the minor things that they've done in the last couple of days with the expansion draft and with the trade, it has me thinking, not only is this coach going to possibly be someone that Ernst Tanner just has a relationship with and trust is going to, yes, man's a tough way to phrase it, but yes, will be that person that's going to be more aligned, as they said, more aligned with the philosophies and the viewpoints, but also someone that's going to be the bridge of whatever this crazy rebuild that we potentially are going to get underway is going to be able to lead. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. I think somebody that's a veteran, like if they bring in someone that's too new and this is their first MLS head coaching job or a first head coaching job in general, to me that means that we're going young. We're in full on rebuild. If they bring in somebody that's more of a veteran that maybe is going to be a plug and play that will understand how to jump right in and change the culture and change the locker room and just the overall vibe around the team, that gives me a little bit more optimism. But if it's a veteran that is a yes man, I don't know about that either. There's just a lot of things, a lot of factors to keep in mind for who Ernst Tanner and Jay Sugarman feel like is a good fit.
Yeah, so if you look right now at kind of the managerial career of Thomas Leich, it's not the best, if we're being quite honest. If I'm reading this correctly, he started managing back in 2015 with FC Leifringer, which is, I believe, in the second division of Bundesliga. But Renee, honestly, this guy has not managed more than 2 full seasons in any of his stops. FC Leifenberg was 2 seasons. Essingberg Au was 1 season, if that. Austria Wien 2 seasons. Vitesse, like I mentioned, the Vitesse Arnhem 3 seasons. VFL Bochum, he didn't even finish the 2024 season. So I think that's something that I've noticed was a bit of a concern for a lot of Union fans, and I do understand that. But like I've talked about before, I felt as if once that Jim Curtin news came down, I felt like the next manager was going to be someone with a European flair. If you guys remember, if you guys think back to when Ernst came here in 2018, he kind of Jim was there. Jim had a history of the youth. Obviously, up until he came there, his record was not great, but maybe some backing from the ownership group. That's what kept him in the job when Ernst arrived there. So now that Ernst has this first opportunity to hire his man, I would fully expect it would be someone he's familiar with. We could obviously be wrong. There were some rumblings that they would be looking at someone with MLS experience. But at the end of the day, this just feels like someone that, number one, will continue to emphasize the philosophy and tactics of this club. I don't think that's going to go anywhere. I don't think the high pressing, the 2 forwards, the diamond formation in the middle, I don't think that's going to go anywhere. And also, too, the emphasis of the kids, because Leich in this past has also managed some youth teams as well. And he's played in some leagues as well that emphasize the kids, too. So it just feels like this is a marriage that could be coming in the works.
And honestly, the direction, I know we had talked about this before, when you look across not only MLS, but also the NWSL, the USL is a little bit better about it. A lot of the head coaches across both leagues are European coaches that have come into the league. In fact, there's actually been a very high carousel. I know on the NWSL side alone, there's been a lot of turnover where most coaches are in their first or second season as of 2024. And I think it's all except for 1 or 2. The MLS is not far off from that. When you look at the tenure of coaches, I haven't dug as deep into it, but there's been a lot of turnover. There's been a lot of a coaching carousel. And there's also been a lot more of just kind of the change of bringing in European-based coaches. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the foundation of what the Union is trying to build is more of that. We're going to really lean into the homegrowns. We're going to really lean into the academy. That is a very European mindset. That's something that's still being, I guess, integrated into American soccer, of having at the youth level, the professional teams have their own academy teams. Obviously, the MLS is doing it a lot more than anything in women's soccer, but it's a change. Whereas in the European game, that's the norm. Players start working in 12, 13, 14 years old, work their way up to the senior team. You build that foundation, you build the pipeline. And so who can help build that pipeline? A European coach that's used to that. And so I do feel like, to your point, if that is the direction they're going to go, it would be someone that has that experience to help continue to take the great work that's already been done with the homegrowns to the next level. I know Lewis in the chat is saying,
that's
in your opinion, Lewis, I love it. Hire Jim Curtin. That's hilarious. And then also the U.S. men's national team fired Greg Berhalter and brought him back 2 months later. The union can absolutely do the same. Who says you can't? You make up the rules. Maybe you fired him as kind of a wake-up call. It's kind of like when you break up with someone, but then it's not like fully over. You get back together. I don't know. Maybe this is a small breakup. It's not a permanent one.
This is like the Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez.
Right. They're just going to break up, go their separate ways for a little, and then come back. That's basically, yeah, perfect. This is Ben and J-Lo. That didn't work out well, but hope it's well.
So the union's mentality for an ex-manager is like my dad's mentality with the Colombian national team coach. My dad always, ever since I was a kid, Colombia will never succeed until we have a European manager. I guess my dad has been right somewhat, but we shall see. But let's talk about some more news and rumors. And Renee, you brought it up. Let's talk about it. So last night, late over here in the East Coast, we had an expansion. Yeah. Oh my God. We had ourselves a little bit of an expansion draft. That's right. We'll be welcoming a new club into the MLS in 2025, San Diego FC. Great start so far. Obviously, Chucky Lozano signing was big for them. They were linked to Kevin De Bruyne. I think it's a great sports market in general, but they had an expansion draft. The Union did protect Sam Adeniran. Obviously, he's headed to Austria. Alejandro Bedoya, Amir Berdicio, as we all know, he is not going to be back next year. Chris Donovan, Jack Elliott. Of course, we know that the Union are negotiating a deal, which hold on to that note in just a second. Leon Flock, which we all know he's not coming back next year, and we did talk about rumblings of possibly wanting to go back to Europe. Isaiah LaFleur and, of course, the legendary Joaquin Torres were all protected from San Diego FC's expansion draft. So, who did they select, Renee? They selected, this is interesting, 5 total players in their expansion draft. 5 of those bad boys. It's changed since like the 2000s, these expansion drafts. So they selected midfielder Heine Gickling Bruseth. I'm sorry for mispronouncing it, Heine. He's from Orlando City. They also selected from the Colorado Rapids Jasper Loflesund, and then defender Hamidi Diop from Charlotte FC, another midfielder, and Jose Kijima from St. Louis City, and then last but not least, NYCFC's Thiago Andrade. Now, the interesting part about this is that realistically, they are walking away with 3 players from their expansion draft, because right after that, they immediately traded Thiago Andrade to TFC in exchange for a 2025 MLS Super Draft pick, another note you should keep a hold on to, as well as $250,000 in GAM and a sell-on percentage for any further transfer abroad. So funny. And then Jose Kijimi, it was traded to DC United for $400,000 in 2025 GAM. Yeah. I guess, what did San Diego FC really do in their expansion draft? It's funny because this was like the crux of how you were building your expansion team. The core of your team was going to be built from this, and then obviously you figure out the rest through the markets. But it's interesting the mindset that teams are handling expansion drafts now in 2024.
Yeah, it's different. I think the way that teams are built in the MLS is more of the transfer window. It's free agency. It's actually even shopping outside of the MLS. It's not really even bringing in MLS specific players. So I wouldn't be surprised. And I know there's been some people that have made comments regarding the super draft overall and expansion drafts. These are more formalities that we have in the United States of like how our leagues are constructed. Of one of their tentpole events is a draft every year, and you get to see who's coming out of college and where they're landing and all the excitement of getting to walk a red carpet and getting dressed up. But let's be honest, the MLS SuperDraft and the Expansion Draft and all these different things they're formalities. It's to check a box. And so I'm actually not surprised, as you talked about San Diego drafting 5 but only keeping 3, trading 2 for assets, because we do have free agency does open. It actually opened up today at 1 p.m. So shortly before our show, free agency began. So anybody that is 21, or excuse me, yes, 21 also, but 24, at least 24 with at least 5 MLS service years and are either option declined or out of a contract for the 2024 season is available for free to enter into free agency. And so that is also something where I think teams will build and add some players, not to mention, as we talk about with the Union, it's shopping internationally. It's shopping elsewhere. It's, developing some sort of a homegrown system. Of course, for San Diego, that will take time. So I think the expansion draft overall, way too late. I get it, they're on the West Coast, but good Lord, it was like starting at like 10 o'clock. And then on top of that, bedtime. I literally was getting notifications and I'm like, I'm going to bed. I am in bed. But then also it just, I think, is a sign that reality of how you build a team. The players, okay, to backtrack, JP, the players that a team does not protect going into an expansion draft, they're not really the best players to build a team around anyways. Like, no disservice to anyone. It's talent, but you're going to protect your better players. And the ones that are left unprotected available for the expansion draft are those bottom of the roster pieces that you keep them, you didn't cut them, but they're not someone that you absolutely need next season. Mm-hmm. So between the expansion draft we saw here, the WNBA just had one. Every expansion draft you see, you're picking up players that have already been in the league. That's a positive. They've already had time to play in the league, but they're not going to be the core of your team. They're going to be role players, reserve players, or at least they should be. If not, that's a concern if they come in and are like your best players. So I do think we're going to see a shift in general across the MLS because teams are valuing less and less any of these drafts.
That's right. That is correct. And listen, if you ask some certain Cincinnati fans, I'll tell you that their expansion drafts will put them in that hole that Albright and Noonan had to get them out of. So it is definitely an interesting strategy. What's up, Ian? My boy Ian checking on in. Oh, I did see your rumblings of this. Renee, if this actually happens, I don't know what to do. I
actually think I'd be happy for Jim.
Oh my God.
Like personally, like beyond the work that we do to cover the Union, if Jim Curtin goes anywhere in the MLS and it's a team that's like an NYCFC, I know people were calling for him to go to Inter Miami when that opening was still available. If he goes to a team that's willing to spend, that's a playoff team.
They're still young too.
They're good for him. That's all I could say. Good for him. Yeah. Oh, he'd be reunited. I mean, you'd love that.
Andres Pereira would be like, why don't you play me in Philly?
You again.
And then, of course, he's I did hear this too. San Diego's had a couple years to build this up. Southern California, as we all know, is a hotbed for young soccer talent. So that would be very smart for them to take advantage of that. But when we come back, ladies and gentlemen, we'll talk some more about what's happening in this offseason. We have MLS Cup talk as well in just 1 second. But first, ladies and gentlemen, let us talk about our friends over at Rite Aid. That is right, because it is that time of year. It's December. It's cold. And, of course, we're all gathering because it's that time of year. Our holidays are here. We're going to have some family gatherings. And that means that, yeah, you hear that? That means people are getting sick. So you need to protect yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. And Rite Aid is the spot to protect yourselves, whether it be the vaccines that you may need, or if you are already sick, getting those tissues. Of course, if you're Latino like me, you know about the Vipapuru, all right? Vicks Vapor Rub. We all remember mom and dad burning that and putting it on our chest, putting it around our nose to help her with our congestion. That's at Rite Aid as well. Your cough drops for my wife who loves those cough drops when she's sick. And any of the over-counter medications, of course, Rite Aid has you covered. Of course, listen, if as well too, listen, it's cold, maybe some hot cocoa. I know they got hot cocoa over at Rite Aid because Rite Aid is our one-stop shop for everything that we have. So right now, head on over to riteaid.com to find your local Rite Aid. Of course, you can walk into your local Rite Aid as well. If you have any questions about medications or whatever it may be, anything about health, They have their very friendly pharmacist that'll be able to answer any of your questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, please, for your sake and for everyone else's sake, make sure you guys are staying healthy with our friends over at Rite Aid.
The Vicks Vapor Rub just triggered me so much because there was nothing like getting a nice Vicks on you and you're going to bed. But as a kid, not only was I one that was fortunate that my parents gave me all the Vicks and all the cold medicines, but they also helped me be financially responsible and learn how to have some real world skills. And if you too want to take advantage of a chance to teach your kids some real world skills around financial responsibility, you can do so with our friends over at TrueMark Financial Credit Union. They have the Greenlight account. Now, the Greenlight account allows you in an app to set up a chance for your kids or teenagers to have their own financials in terms of savings goals, tracking their spending, getting an allowance. They even can have a debit card so they can get that practice of tapping, scanning, swiping, and being able to make purchases and learn real world skills. And the best thing about these hands-on money skills, it's like the ultimate playbook. You can teach your kids and be able to give them guidance, advice, support around it because you have a chance to stay in control of it all right from your phone. So it's the peace of mind and getting the freedom to make smart decisions with their money, not to mention the independence you're teaching them, the responsibility you're teaching them, and really being able to coach your kids through their own financial gain. So with TrueMark Financial Credit Union, for anybody that's a member, when you sign up for the Greenlight app, it's actually free. So you get a chance to, for free, get your kids a great gift this holiday season, the gift of being financially responsible, the gift of having the confidence and independence of knowing how to save and how to spend wisely. So if you want to get signed up today, visit TrueMark.com/Greenlight for more information with our friends over at TrueMark Financial Credit Union.
I love it. Yeah, that Renee, that was every time you were sick as a kid, my dad would come in, bring the old newspaper. No, my dad was insane. The old newspapers, and then he would grab a spoon and a lighter. He would actually melt the Vicks, put it all over my chest, put some under my nose so I can breathe at night. Yeah, ask any of your Latino friends. They know about that trick very, very well.
We didn't go that far, but we did have it under the nose, which I always thought was problematic because sometimes as a kid, it was like, you can't touch it because it's going to burn. You're like, you don't want to get on your hands because then you're, of course, eventually going to get in your eyes. Yep. So like whenever Vicks was on, it was like the scariest thing to sleep. Like I felt like I couldn't move on your chest, on your nose. I still have like my own little vapor. They have vapor sticks now. That's way easier.
I have some Vicks. But I retired the melting of the Vicks. Sorry,
Dad. Let's. There's a couple of things that our parents did that were great back then that we don't need to do now.
Yeah, we don't need to do that. All right, let's move forward because there are some things we do need to do, Renee, and we need to talk about some transfer rumors. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We are in transfer rumor period, depending on who you ask, your favorite period of the year, but according to our sources over in Argentina, boludo. No, Julian Carranza is not coming back, guys. I'm sorry. I don't have that news for you. Yeah, it would be something. All right, let me make sure I get this guy. So Uriel Lut, I think his name is. He put this report out there that from Newell's Old Boys, Ian Glavinovich is a center back who's 23 years old. He's been linked to the Union in a loan deal. The loan deal would have an option to buy attached to it as well. What is very interesting about this kid in particular seems like he has some promise. Now, he was linked earlier in the year for a purchase from Brazilian club Vasco da Gama, semi big club over there. In Brazil. I think they're the only Brazilian club that actually signed an American player. Quick little tidbit from you. Shouts to Kobe Jones. But that deal fell through. And he stayed there. And it was, I think in June, he had his highest transfer market rate at $2.5 million. He's solid. He's a solid player. Someone did bring my attention on social media that this past year, he did suffer through a significant amount of injuries. And he hasn't really played too much since June, early June there. So that's definitely something to keep in mind of. But of course, as we all know, we've talked about it before. This is a position that we've looked at under a microscope because the fact is we allowed a lot of goals. We allowed a lot of goals in crucial minutes of matches. That's why we went on a 10-game winless streak. And so this could possibly be it. This could be the reinforcement that comes in. I guess, Renee, the one thing that I have, because obviously, listen, I don't know how much all of us are tapped into news over in Argentina.
You're not watching that every day?
Boca Juniors. Knowles, I don't really know too much about. But the thing is that we are in contract negotiation talks with Jack Elliott. This kid seems like a legit this isn't like Jarmir Berdicio, right? Like, this isn't like a loan deal for him to be lost in Union 2. This seems like a kid that's going to have a prominent role in the rotation. So what does that mean for Jack Elliott? Does this mean he's gone? Like, this is an interesting dynamic.
Bye. We were listening to NSYNC the other day, so for anybody that doesn't get the joke. But I will say, we've talked about this, JP. If the Union are going to move on from Jack Elliott, or if they're going to tweak their back line, you have to bring in players that have experience at a high level. That's not a position you can bring in young players and give them the opportunity to learn and take their lumps on the fly. You know, that's back line, maybe outside back, maybe, but definitely center back needs to be somebody that's going to be able to come in and be ready, because they're also typically your leaders, your vocal players, the ones organizing you, the experienced ones. They're the ones that are literally anchoring your team. So goalie, center back, those are the two areas you have to get right from the jump. There's no time to waste. There's no time for projects in that sense, not on the field. And they haven't gotten it right, to be honest. When you really think about the Union in terms of their center backs, they have had kind of, a hit or miss. We've seen the Olweithu Macanyas and Brandon Craigs and different players that are just kind of in limbo, in between. And so to hear that you have a 23-year-old, he's 6 feet tall, solid height, just some of the numbers on him, as you talked about, he hasn't played as much. So in the course of this season, he's played, this is 6 matches. He's played a total of 90 minutes per game. He started all 6 of them, so he plays the majority of the game. He doesn't have any stats in terms of goals, assists, anything like that, but he is someone that is playing. His touches, he gets like 62.3 touches. He's got a 82% passing accuracy. In terms of any sort of like long balls and passes, it's right up around 50% accuracy as well. And it's the tackles, it's picking off passes, it's his ability to help get clearances, to read the game. That is something that you get statistically from him, because there are stats for that now as defenders. And also, he's really good at winning 50-50 balls in 1v1 battles, around 61% that he's been able to win in terms of his total duels won and ground duels and aerial duels as well. So he's going to give you the aerial presence. He's going to give you a good 1v1 defender. And my thing is, I can't say, watching where he plays to the Union, it's going to exactly translate over. But the numbers are good. I haven't, again, like you said earlier, can't act like I've been following every day and can even pick him out of a lineup. But I do know they need to be exploring these types of players. This is encouraging to hear. Again, 23 years old, not 17, 18 years old, has had more years under his belt, experience, is a full game player, is a starter, and someone that you would hope has the expectation to come in and immediately be, if not, regardless of what happened to Jack Elliott, if not taking over his role, but at least competing for that spot. Similar to what we saw with like Damian Lowe when he came in. They need that. They need that third center back. They need that next center back. So I like this. I like the fact that they're linked to him. And I hope that this is not the last player they get linked to. But Ian Glavinovich, I can get used to saying it. We'll continue deep diving a little bit more around his like highlights and stuff. But so far, I think it could be a good opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. As we got some guys in the chat here, you want your kids to be financially responsible and tell them to be Union fans.
Terrible.
That's good.
That's so true.
Our girl Jillian checking in. Love Jillian. Possible loan with him could be good. I 1000% agree.
Yeah.
I mean, the dude. First off, Argentina is a solid place for these type of players. This league's had solid success with these type of players as well, who come over from Argentina at a young age or at a younger age. And the fact is that, I mean, if Vasco da Gama was looking at him and we're legitimately looking at him, and I think the only reason why the deal didn't go through was they pulled the Cleveland Browns and didn't fill out the paperwork properly in time. And so
why are people doing that? Click submit.
It's so crazy, but that's why I didn't go through. And so this leaves a perfect opportunity for Philly to kind of. And the thing is too, like especially in Brazil and Argentina, which as a Colombian, I hate to say this, but it's obviously the highest level of South American soccer.
Yeah.
And so like these type of players are more willing to come here to the States and play because they see the avenue. They see that you can come here, you can make some dough. It's a solid living, and then you can jump board into the European leagues, which is where at the end of the day, that's what they all do want. This Renee is a Ernst type of signing. All right, like this is a kid who's younger, who comes from a league that like Argentina, South America. He has had some success in South America. El Brujo Martinez, Sergio Santos was good for what he was as well. And this kid in general has just played at a high level. So I'm with you.
Yeah, the last thing I want to add is I do like the fact that his market value has constantly increased. So now, as of like 2024, he's at a 2.5 million euros of what his current market value is on transfer market. That's actually drastically increased even since like last December, where it was more around 500,000. So there's a reason his numbers are going up, his value is going up, and it is exciting because you do need someone with height. You do need someone that is going to be able to plug and play and be ready to go to help out as a starter and as an everyday player.
Aren't they looking at the 6'7" defender from, I believe he's talking about one of the Pierre. Is it Neil or Nelson Pierre? I think that's who he's referring to. And from my understanding, they're just not ready for those consistent minutes over here in the top league or in the top team. So, yeah, I mean, I just think that I also think that Jack will be gone, and I do think that if this was another year where you had I don't think they have as much as a congested schedule in 25 that they have in the past. So I do think that they probably aren't looking for 3 center backs like they have in the past, but I could be wrong.
And Neil Pierre is 17 years old. He is someone that has shown major strides as a center back with Union too. He is one of the actual better players. I know even we had previous guests on like Jack Edwards, and I know even Jillian has talked about him. One of those players that has shown they are getting closer to being made, MLS ready. But again, as a 17-year-old, how ready would he be versus someone that has been playing internationally? I do think he'd be a great option that is right there on the cusp of being able to take that next step.
That's right. That's right. And real quick, when we come back, ladies and gentlemen, it's time. We're going to talk about the MLS Cup. We will have our guests along with us as well. But first, let's talk about our friends.
Yeah. Let me tell you about our friends over at Rothman Orthopedic, because part of making sure that we're also doing our parts in all aspects of our lives, stay healthy, is also making sure our bodies are feeling great too. You want to make sure if you have any aching joints, hands cramping, if your back's bothering you, you have a place to go that you can trust that has been consistently for years providing great support and specialized care, and that's Rothman Orthopedics. For over 50 years, they've been locked into their mission: high quality, compassionate, and affordable care rooted in research and providing leading and new treatments to give better outcomes. So every Rothman Orthopedic doctor is laser focused on a specialty area: hips, knees, spines, you name it, they cover it. They have a team for it. And what that means is they also have 200 plus fellowship trained physicians that are subspecialized in those areas to provide you with hand and wrist care, sports medicine, physical medicine and rehabilitation, orthopedic oncology, trauma and fracture care, whatever it is you're needing. Rothman has specialized areas they can help with their team. They also proudly serve dozens of communities across Pennsylvania and New Jersey alone, with over 30 community offices, urgent cares, and walk-in centers. Easy to find them. I know where I can find my local Rothman Orthopedics, whether it was back where I grew up in Ewing, in Philly. I can find a Rothman Orthopedics pretty much anywhere. And they just have the wide range of orthopedic care. From diagnosis to discharge, they're providing their patients with great service and procedures necessary: x-rays, orthotics, bracing, MRIs, physical therapy, and much, much more. So year after year, Rothman has been consistently performing at a high volume of ankle replacements, hip, knee, shoulder replacements, procedures, but also great care. So Rothman Orthopedics, for more than 50 years, specialized in orthopedics and you can visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to learn more and to make an appointment today with our friends at Rothman Orthopedics.
That's right. I love it, Renee. All right. And now let's talk real quick about our friends over at Coors Light, because it's that, like we talked about earlier, it's that time of year. We're getting together, right? We're going to have Christmas coming up. There's going to be a lot of sports going on. And of course, as I always say, there's no sports watching for me without having that nice, cold, refreshing Coors Light. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, I love some of the heavier craft beers. They're nice and tasty, but I get a little filled with it. And what the beauty of Coors Light is that, especially when it's nice and cold, it's nice and refreshing. And there's nothing better than having that Coors Light. When the mountains turn blue, it's as cold as the Rockies. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a much smoother finish. When you embrace a chill mindset, it's a good time to choose chill and crack open that Coors Light. And right now, like we always say, you guys don't have to go to that beer store if you don't need to. You can get it delivered right to your front door. All you got to do is visit CoorsLight.com/PHLY soccer. That's CoorsLight.com/PHLY soccer. Get it delivered right to your front door with their friends over at Instacart. Nothing better than that. Make sure you guys are celebrating responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. All right, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, with that said, it is time now. Yes, we had a championship game over the weekend, and we're going to get the sights and sounds. We'll talk about it all. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on in to the show, Miss Lili Beth from Area Sports Network. Lili Beth, how we doing? What's going on?
Hi, guys. How are you?
We are doing great. Probably feeling actually, I'm sure over in New York they're feeling better because the Red Bulls make the finals and we didn't even make the playoffs. So it's good times over in New York.
It's split 50-50 now. We have two teams here, so
that's right. That is right. So Lili Beth, we got to talk. Obviously, I see you over in social media. I see the sights and sounds at MLS Cup. Can't tell you enough how jealous I was. It looked freaking awesome having the MLS Cup over in Carson. So kind of to start off, let's talk a little about the sights and sounds. So if you saw pre-game, saw it during the game, after the game, anything funny that was noticeable?
Well, the environment was incredible. We have to remember that LA Galaxy, the fans were boycotting the team just last season. And now to go have them host an MLS Cup and seeing the fans like really show out, like it was great. And not only that, the Red Bull fans that traveled to Carson, there was over 2,000 Red Bull fans that traveled and they made themselves heard at the stadium. It was honestly a great environment, incredible.
Oh my goodness. I love that. And I also do enjoy the storylines for both of these teams. Obviously for LA Galaxy winning their first since 2014, Red Bulls haven't been back to this point since like 2008. So it's an opportunity for two clubs that are original MLS clubs, but also haven't been here in recent years to have a chance. And another New York LA championship, all the storylines that we saw. But as you mentioned, it was so annoying. But in all seriousness, it is a great opportunity, as you mentioned, for fans that haven't had a chance to get to an MLS Cup game to go cheer on their team. This game, though, was insane. It had a little bit of everything, and I'd love to get your early takeaways on this 2-1 LA Galaxy win for the title, because it gave us the drama, it gave us the controversy, it gave us the back and forth, goals. What were your thoughts on just how these two teams both stepped up on the biggest stage and faced off?
Yeah, of course. So, like the Red Bulls, they had like a really they were pulling upset after upset to get to the final. So them even reaching it was incredible. I think regarding the match, aside from LA Galaxy fans, I think most of us thought it could go either way just because of the upset that the Red Bulls were pulling and the surprises. But the match itself, I think, LA Galaxy getting those two goals early on, they were both before the 15-minute mark. I think it's really hard to come back from that. I think the Red Bulls were a little sloppy in the beginning. The second goal, Carlos Coronel, he just watched the ball go to the back of the net. But the Red Bulls were able to get in the 28th minute. They scored. Lili scored after a little scuffle in the box after a corner that they got. So I think it was pretty even the second half. The New York Red Bulls were really, really going for it, but McCarthy was making these incredible saves to keep LA Galaxy in the lead. And I think they were unlucky. Forsberg had this great opportunity in 72nd minute where it hit the post and you saw him fall to his knees. And I think I was on the sideline watching and I was like, that was the tie. That was it.
Yep.
It was rough, but I thought it was a great game. Like you said, the Red Bulls really going for it. It was a lot of back and forth.
It felt like a match from the 90s, as both these clubs were the original teams in the league, which was very interesting. But another big storyline, Lily, was the fact that, listen, and Renee could probably tell you as well, I love Ricky Puig. That guy plays the way I would want my number 10 to play, and he actually had talent around him this year, which was a big part of it. And for my money, he was the MVP of the entire league this year. But they didn't have him in the MLS Cup final, which was one of the big storylines. So how did the Galaxy kind of combat that? I mean, that's a big loss in a final there. How are they able to combat the loss of Puig?
Yeah, so obviously Ricky, like, he's a huge asset to this team, but I think that getting to this final and getting to where they got to this year, being like they ended up second place after LAFC in the West, but just all these like wins after a struggle of a year and kind of a rebrand. I think that they also had this win it for Ricky mentality that was like the slogan going into this game. Let's win it for him. But they were really looking for Joe Painsil the whole match. I think his speed is very necessary. And when you have players like Marco Delgado and Gaston Brickman on the midfield, they both provided assists. I think, like you said, there's a lot of talent on this team. And even though they were missing a key asset, they were able to use the talent that they have on that roster to pull through.
Yeah, I mean, this is a group for LA Galaxy, 69 regular season goals, which was a conference high, but also outscored leading up to the MLS Cup, had outscored all their opponents 16-3, and of course win 2-1. So you can do the math there. They were firing on all cylinders, and Ricky was a huge loss, but I got that same vibe that they were going to play for him, but also knowing their offense didn't run just through him. They had plenty of playmakers that they could count on, not to mention defensively. As you mentioned, my guy, John McCarthy, that I went to school with, so happy for him and so happy to see him getting another MLS Cup title. He won with LAFC 2022 yes. And then again with LA Galaxy. And so, selfishly, I did enjoy that. But I also did enjoy this fact that we didn't want to see Red Bulls even in the MLS Cup. But once they were there, I kind of was open to whoever wins. It's a great story. It's a great Cinderella run for a 7th seed. It's a great, return back from being one of the worst teams in the league last season for LA Galaxy. So they both had this cool, overcoming triumphant story. And Lily, Beth, I'm curious your thoughts on looking ahead now, how much these are two teams they do spend. They do invest in their team. But is this lightning in a bottle? Because it reminds me, when the Union went to the MLS Cup in 2022, it felt like, oh, they can get back. They'll learn from that, they'll get back, and they've actually been regressing every season. For both LA Galaxy and the Red Bulls, do you think these two teams, when you look ahead and even seeing their MLS Cup matchup, they're built for continued success? That this is a team two teams that will be at the top of the league again. Of course, it's very early. It's only December. But you anticipate will continue this, or is this that lightning in a bottle, one-time run, and it won't happen again for a while? What are your predictions?
I think for the LA Galaxy, they definitely can continue this run. I mean, they just got Gabriel Peck and Painsil. I think that they can continue with this team and run with it. Obviously, they'll be missing Ricky for half of the season, but like we already mentioned, they have a great squad. I think for the Red Bulls, they have to invest in players. I know they have a lot of homegrown talent. They just renamed their stadium and they're getting a huge endorsement from Sports Illustrated for that. So I think if they invest that money back into their team and building their roster, Emil Forsberg is great, but I think that definitely they need a little more support. And I think that if they invest that back into the team, they can have a good run and definitely finish within playoff contention.
All right, well, I guess I have to ask Lili, Beth, because I think the rest of the internet had this question too when they announced the new stadium name. Where the heck did Sports Illustrated get all this money? They just went through mass layoffs, and now
they have a stadium.
Yeah, insane.
It is absolutely wild.
A little mixed reviews here in New York about the stadium name. Obviously, if you're a Red Bull fan, you hate to lose the name of your team on the stadium, but I think it comes with good revenue and good investments for the team.
I really need to go. I've only been there for Colombia. I've never been there for an MLS match. I need to go there as an MLS game because I've never seen it. I lost them all my life.
I was gonna say, are you in? I like the fact they actually renamed it because of, especially with them sharing the arena with Gotham. It was weird to me that this is the Red Bull Arena and they're not the only team that plays there. Sports Illustrated Stadium, I think, is a little bit of a mouthful. I think there's worse names. that we've heard. Way worse that have like .com in them, and those I think are so mind-boggling to me. It could have been like SI Stadium. I don't know. Like I think there's some other alternatives they could have gone with, but it does feel like they are investing, unfortunately. And to even my previous question, it does feel like Red Bulls are trying to make sure to show that this is not a fluke, that this is the beginning of them kind of taking a step as a club and investing in their club.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I also wanted to ask you here about the Galaxy, and just specifically. So obviously now the Galaxy, they have the championship, they have the crown. So what can the league learn from the Galaxy? How does the rest of the league catch up to the LA Galaxy here?
I think one takeaway I got from this whole run this year was that the fans matter. I think that they made their voice heard with the boycotting, and I think when the Galaxy brought in Will Kuntz, I think that the team completely changed. And when they made the right moves, letting go of their VP and bringing in new talent, I think if you want this league to grow, this is a growing league. You have to listen to your fans, because this is a new league per se. It's not at the level at top 5 Premier League, La Liga, leagues. And if you want this to grow, you need to invest and listen to your core fan base, because they're going to help spread this league.
You are speaking to all of Philadelphia right now.
I was going to say, this is exactly what the Union fan base especially is hoping. And there are other teams across the league too, hoping that they can emulate, because as you mentioned, it was just last season that LA Galaxy fans were boycotting. I remember we talked about it even on the show here. And here you are, fast forward, then they just won their 6th MLS Cup, the only team that's been able to do that. And so it's remarkable to see how much they were able to change the culture, change the direction of this club overall. And I also feel like it's part of the change of just where the league is at, to be honest, Lily Beth. I mean, we've talked so much this season alone about the Inter Miamis and the amount of money that teams are spending to invest in their clubs. We were just talking about the draft and its relevance and value. Do you feel as though the league is moving in a direction, or what is the direction, I guess I should say, you feel the league is moving? Because it does feel like in a way to try to keep up with the European leagues, they're changing how they're acquiring players, changing even the spending. Like there's some aspects of it that feel like they're evolving. And I feel like this MLS Cup maybe was kind of that final chip to fall before we take that step into like the new MLS era that I feel like is being ushered in. I don't know if that even makes sense, but it feels like there's a change across the league to invest, to spend, to be less of a stepping stone and more of a final destination for players.
Yeah, definitely. I think the league, obviously right now, bringing in Messi, Suarez, like everything that Inter Miami has, it does bring a lot of attention, growth, and revenue to the league. But one thing I think the teams are doing, Don Garber did speak, he gave like a State of the League speech at the MLS Cup week. There is not going to be a big raise in like spending for clubs. So I think that what the clubs need to do is kind of invest, I think, in players like Ricky, someone who's young and has this talent, because obviously Messi and Suarez, they bring attention now, but they've got a few years left. And then what happens to the league after that? So someone like Ricky, who came so young and he is shining, like to me, I agree, he was the MVP for me. Someone like Cucho Hernandez for Columbus, who I think is incredible, to me also an MVP contender. Bringing in this young talent that will grow with the league, I think is super important.
Yeah, and then they still have that hunger too. Like, they come, like Pooch is a great example. He's still got that hunger, and he comes in, and it's just a locker room that also feels the same way. And there you go, you win a championship. And to the point too, like let's just say Pooch does go back to Europe at some point. Like right here in Philadelphia, we had Brendan Aronson a couple years ago when he was with Leeds United. We were all glued on Saturdays and Sundays watching Leeds United because that was one of our guys. And so that's some kind of like a marketing tactic too. Like, listen, this is a player that did play for your club, and now he's over in Europe and he's playing really, really well. But my last question here, Lily, is kind of tying this all in. So obviously, listen, we love this product. We love this sport. This is the country we live in. We want this sport to be more popular, not only domestically, but internationally as well. Now, there was an interesting article that came out, and for our listeners, we will dive deeper into this next week because I definitely think we need to dive deep into this. But Sports Business Journal put out an article about the MLS Cup linear audience that went down nearly 50%, ladies and gentlemen. That's a significant blow there. They brought up some numbers, some rating numbers from obviously the cable, because obviously we don't have the Apple TV numbers. But it's clear that MLS Cup lost a little bit of, I guess, glamour, I should say, in 2024. Although it was a good matchup, people just were not tuning in the TV to watch it. For you, just your honest opinion, where do you feel popularity with this league is right now in the country and around the world?
I think it's the temporary hype per se because of the players that Inter Miami has. I think that the league needs to focus on longevity. I also did see an article that Apple TV lost a few subscribers after Messi got eliminated. So that's what I think that the league needs to focus on, is how do we keep these people long term and not just about Messi, and how do we make this league attractive? I think Saturday nights, I think it's a good time frame to watch MLS, like we have in Spain, it's Sunday nights, or example. So we have Saturday nights, fine. I think maybe the subscription service could be a roadblock to watching MLS, although they do have some free matches. Maybe it's not the match you want to watch. You don't want to subscribe to MLS Pass. So that's another maybe roadblock, I think, in the growth of the league. And then the time zone for Europe, it's very hard. So I think including some matchups during the day, like we used to before the Apple TV deal, 1:00 games, I think that would help a lot with the growth.
I missed the 1:00 and 2:00 weekend games, like
too.
a nice mid-afternoon. Oh my goodness. And not to mention, to your point, the MLS is one of the few leagues where there's only one spot to get games. Even with NBA League Pass or NFL League Pass and Red Zone and all these other streaming services, there's at least usually a chance you can watch a game on local TV. Outside of the radio, there's nowhere else to listening on the radio. There's nowhere else to watch MLS games. So to your point, not only are there these walls, literal walls, that people have to try to pay through, but also just makes it difficult. Not everybody has or wants Apple TV. It's not easily accessible or user friendly for everyone. And what if you don't want to watch on Apple TV and you want to watch, the same way that I think the NFL has Peacock and then Prime and then ESPN and then CBS. I think the MLS is it's too much in one space, and the games all at the same time, all 7:00. It's a lot. It's difficult. So great points that you bring up there.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we let you go, listen, you do a great job covering your local MLS clubs, but I know your number one love is Los Blancos, Real Madrid.
Yes.
So I gotta ask before we let you go, are they going to win La Liga this year? It's a little tight with Atletico and Barcelona.
It's a little tight. I think Mbappe needs time. I know people are impatient, and I know we have this super team and you expect them to take off right away. But I think they need time, and we've had so many injuries this season, and they're slowly making a comeback. But I think we'll really see, by February where we stand with the league and if we can make it happen. I mean, there's rumors that there's not going to be no January transfers. So we'll have to, with the team we have. I think it's hard when you have a team like Real Madrid that's expected to win everything. I think it's almost more pressure.
I feel that. I definitely feel that.
Agreed.
Well, Lili, Beth, listen, we really appreciate taking some time to chat with us here in Philadelphia. Best of luck to you, and I definitely hope that we can get you back on here. Maybe for the season.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me, and I hope to see you guys up here when Philly comes play either New York Red Bull or NYCFC.
I'm always down. Renee be playing.
Yeah, you guys should just come up here. We can.
We will.
Sounds good, Lili Beth. Thank you so much again. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
That's right. Lili Beth, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you guys check her out. She does a great job on Instagram, on TikTok as well with the visual content. We love it. And of course, a big Real Madrid fan. But
can I ask you, JP?
Yes, of course.
What'd you do over there, buddy?
What do you mean? What I do?
Where'd your lights go?
So
I was cracking up.
So full disclosure, I don't know if anyone noticed, but I've moved around my office, right? So I don't work here full time anymore.
You're not by your window.
I had exactly. So now it's on the other side. So now I have to figure out my outlet situation. So I think this outlet situation is not good. All right. So I have one light and I had to raise the brightness on my MacBook. So.
I was watching you struggle over there. I was like, oh my gosh. You look fine. I mean, we can see you clearly, but it was obvious you just lost the light. So I was cracking up.
That was good. But let's end on one more note here, Renee, and let's focus here now on the trade of the trade of the week, Renee.
Breaking news.
This is like only crap that happens in Philadelphia, right? Because like who the heck trades away all these picks? But let's talk about it. So of course, Ernst Tanner being Ernst Tanner, this isn't the first time he's done it, but this is the biggest one he's done. With the Colorado Rapids, he has traded not only all of his picks for 2025, but also all of his picks for 2026 and 2027. It's insane. So this deal, so for those 3 years of draft picks, the Union could it's $350,000 in GAM, but if there are certain things that are met, it could be up to $600,000 in GAM. I think the argument here is, why do you give up on draft picks? That's the one thing I've heard constantly from this type of news. I think for myself, Renee, like, I'm not necessarily mad at him drafting this, because for me, the draft is a place where you find depth. And obviously, listen, in this MLS Cup that we just had, 3 players, I think it was, including Sean Nealis, who scored a goal, all came from the MLS draft, MLS Super Draft. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you can't find contributions from these picks. But Ernst feels as if whatever you're going to find in the draft, he easily will find in his academy. And he's even said before, I remember it was a combine, I think it was 2020 or 21, where he was literally saying, like, yeah, like he was at the scouting combine. He's like, yeah, my academy players are better than whatever's on this field. And it's like, okay, yeah, now, but like down the line, they can get better. So it is interesting to say the least.
When I saw this news, I was like, I don't think I've ever seen this ever in any sport, to trade away a first and third round pick in 2025, a first, second, and third in 2026 and 2027. And as you mentioned, with those metrics of what they can possibly get, it's essentially $125,000 the next 2 seasons, $100,000 in 2027 in GAM that they had the potential to make, in addition to that guaranteed $350,000. So they can get up to $600,000 in GAM from the Rapids if all the contingencies are met. So it's just weird, because sadly, this makes me think the Union are really just, we're just going to slowly invest in acquiring players through our homegrown system. Like, this screams to me, forget even the transfer market, because that's where we've been arguing from them bring in European players. And I feel like it's like a big, joke's on you. Not only are we going to avoid bringing in European players, we're also going to we're not going to draft players either. So we're only going to bring in players from where? The homegrowns. Like, this is 3 years of draft picks. 3? And I could see if maybe you staggered it. It was like a pick this year, a pick next year. You don't have a pick at all in any drafts for the next 3 years. What does that say about the direction of the club? And it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. They don't value, teams, and not everybody values the super draft. I get it. But as Ian's reminding us in the chat, Jake Elliott was a draft pick. Wasn't Andre Blake a draft pick? He was the first overall
Jack Elliott, Ian, but yes, Andre was also.
Jake Elliott. I do that all the time too.
He's in my head too. I'm not gonna lie.
I always do Jake and Jack, and they're number 4. Like, it's too much. But it's just weird to me. You need to build your team, and giving up draft picks for GAM, no less. Where are you going to use this money? This better be used in a better space than just like, because that can be used to anything essentially.
Maybe they're using it for Jack's contract.
Maybe.
Yeah, right,
Andre wasn't. He was the first over. He was the first pick.
2014.
They've gotten correct. Like, what are we doing? You've gotten good talent from the draft. You can't just throw it away. If every team was going to give up on the draft, that's one thing. But the Union should not be the ones that are like leading this charge of, we don't care about the super draft. There is talent in the draft, and you're missing it. I don't like it, and I'm very nervous. But it happened.
Yes, real quick. For everyone who is watching on TV, thank you so much for tuning on in. We really do appreciate. If you want to watch more PHLY Union podcasts, head on over to our YouTube channel and allphly.com as well. In fairness, 2014 was Andre's draft year, and 2017 was Jack Elliott's draft year. So things have changed a little bit in roster construction. Youth academies weren't up to par back then as well. But again, I'm with you. Where is this? What is this money being used for? Like, I don't care. I don't necessarily care that you traded the picks away, because I do agree. Like, I do think that our depth can be used within our academy. But what are we using this money for? What are these resources going to? And that's kind of where I'm at, and where I'm like, why do we do this? Why?
It just doesn't make sense. Like, who sat and thought this was a good idea? Every single pick, 8 picks in 3 years. It's weird. If anything, I understand the need for more money, but I feel like there's a better way to have gotten some more money that you can use in this club. There's other ways. It just felt a little bit cheap. It felt a little bit like, we're seeing roster moves being made. We're seeing teams that are acquiring players. And what are the Union doing? They're trading away all their draft picks. It's just very odd to me. And especially knowing they're not going to be active probably in the international market. Where are you going to get players from now? Not the draft, not the international market. Where are they coming from?
From Argentina, Ian Glavinovich, who couldn't stay healthy. No one knows him. Doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. That's what we're doing.
He doesn't actually. There's very few. When you Google his name, there's very few things. And okay, I'm not going to judge.
Yeah, I mean, listen.
No.
And like Renee, like we talked about this, like especially after Jim's firing. This is a big offseason here for Ernst.
Correct. This is not the time.
Because the thing is that when you have a failing year like 2024 was, it's easy to use the coach as a scapegoat. It's easy to fire him. It's like that's the one thing everyone always does. But now, Renee, if you have more failing years, you know who gets fired next? It's you, Ernst. It's you. You may have convinced the whole ownership group about your plan and how about you're going to make them profitable. But I do believe that this ownership group does want to win. I also think that they are buying all that Kool-Aid that Ernst Sanders feeding them down in Chester, Pennsylvania. But if this team is not going to win, my friend, you are next. And that's just the cold, hard truth about it. So I'll let them do his thing.
My last thing on this was it did make me feel I don't think it's them giving up in that sense. Like, this is not them throwing in the towel, because it does feel like, and as Ian's mentioning, I've heard other people claim and think that this money's going towards the stadium and the new seating and all these things that those do not.
The complex that they're trying to build.
The training complex, which does not directly correlate to wins, by the way. But I also think, more importantly, beyond wherever this money goes, I think it's a sign of really just how much they're valuing their Union 2 and their development system. And there's a ton of talent there, and it's not a disservice to them or a knock on them, because there are some very, very talented players there, from Neil Pierre to Nelson Pierre to Kevin Sullivan to, Olney and Vasquez, and you can go all the way through. But it's not realistic to solely and only build your team off of the academy product. It's just not. You're not going to be able to keep up with the rest of the league. If this is the direction they're going, you get rid of Jim, you trade away all your draft picks, and you essentially, a player like Jack Elliott, we don't know what's going to happen with him, with Kai, with Ollie. So all your veterans are a lot of the guys that are question marks. It just, to me, shows as the pieces of the puzzle are coming together, the Union are actively about to lean into truly just having the Union 2 as their sole feeder of talent. And that's not encouraging. I don't know how that pans out.
I mean, listen, we'll talk about it too, but I mean, like, do you think the Galaxy and the Red Bull have done this? Like, no. Like, look what the Galaxy did. They built around Poosh. That front line is ridiculous. Panis-Hill, you need to keep an eye on him at all costs. Like, there were so many chances that he had. He just oh man, there's so much work we got to do. I don't know what's gonna happen in this offseason, but I will say this: if Ian is the first signing here, that to me bodes well, because that's kind of the recipe that made Ernst the revered executive that we loved. He was going out into Brazil. He was going out into Venezuela. He was going out into markets that the MLS has success in. and he was bringing in some players. But now you kind of have to reinvent yourself right now, because right now you had two terrible, and I mean terrible, off seasons where you didn't supplement the club whatsoever, and we were put in this position. And you can say all you want about the youth, but if the youth ain't ready, they ain't ready. So we gotta recognize that. But we shall see. We'll have more to talk about next week, Renee. I want to dive deeper into the popularity of the league. I just want to look at more league stuff because, listen, I want, not only do I want the union to grow, but I want this league to grow. That's the beauty of the sport we cover. This is still a young league and a young club as well. So we'll dive deep into that. But that's going to do it for this week's edition of PHLY Union Podcast. Big shout out, big thank you, Lili, Beth, for joining us here today, giving us the sight and sounds of MLS Cup. Shouts to Andrew Frazier behind the glass, taking care of us here as always. Of course, thank you to the lovely Renee Washington. Of course, I am JP Zapata. Make sure you guys are hitting that like button and subscribing, not only for this show, but all the great Philly sports shows that we have here at PHLY Sports. Until next week, ladies and gentlemen, Dupont. Talk to you guys soon.